Hey everybody, welcome to lessonswithtroy.com. I'm Troy Meyer. Well, in this week's lesson, we're starting a new series on the site all about arpeggios in open G tuning. So you could play this on Dobro, resonator guitar, lap steel, as long as you're in GBD tuning from your thickest to your thinnest string. Well, let's answer the question right off the bat. What is an arpeggio? It's a weird word, right? Arpeggio. Basically, it's instead of strumming a chord, chopping a chord, rolling through a chord, you can play each note of that chord individually. Root, third, fifth, root, flat, third, fifth. And all over the neck, it's pretty good to know where these chord tones are, right? These are chord tones. The root is a chord tone, the third is a chord tone, the fifth. And you've got these chord tones all over the neck. So arpeggios are great not only just to play an arpeggio, but more importantly, so that you know where the chord tones are of particular chords. So that if you're playing a song and you move to a particular chord, you know that if you hit any of these chord tones, let's say in our song we go to a C chord, well, you can hit any of these chord tones and it'll sound like it works over that C chord. So that in combination with just playing a straight major scale, knowing your major scale, your minor pentatonic, things like that, definitely give you a lot better roadmap of the fretboard. So let's just start off, first of all, going over all these diagrams that I made for this lesson. Also, this lesson comes with jam tracks to jam along to these arpeggio diagrams that I made. With Band in a Box. I made those jam tracks with Band in a Box, that is. And this is the first diagram we'll be going over. And what we've done is I've broken up these arpeggios into 3 strings at a time, strings 1, 2, and 3, strings 2, 3, and 4, and then strings 3, 4, and 5. Notice I left off strings 4, 5, and 6 because really that would be these here, right? That's the exact same patterns as strings 1, 2, and 3. You just move all these shapes down to strings 4, 5, and 6, and that'll work. So we're trying to keep everything as simple as possible. Notice how each shape or each arpeggio has a different color to it. That's so these shapes really jump out at you. So let's talk about triads and these shapes for just a second. Okay, first off, you may already know this, but a major chord is made up of a root, a major third, and a fifth. And notice how the shapes for these work. They're just straight lines, right? When you're in position there, it's real easy to play an arpeggio there because it's just a straight line. Now, when you move up to a minor chord, you got to move that third back 1 fret. That's called flatting the third. A minor chord has a root, a flatted third, and a fifth. So normally an A major chord would be just like this one, a straight line. But to get an A minor chord, we move that back. Now let's take a step back and check out the shape that we got here. Notice how that's a triangle shape. Okay, so all these on strings 1, 2, and 3, when you get a minor chord, it has that same triangle shape. Okay, then we go over to the diminished chord, and that's made up of a root, a flatted third, and then also a flatted fifth. So root, flat third, flat 5 equals a diminished chord. Check out that shape. We go back 1 fret, forms somewhat of a, L shape, let's say, or a angled L shape. Okay, and then when we go down here, these minor chords have a different shape, but the major chords always are going to stay the same as far as the shape goes because they're all just going to be right on that fret. So we have these shapes for our minor chords. And then the diminished has that reverse kind of triangle there. Okay. And then we go down to strings 3, 4, and 5. Once again, different shapes. But if you start analyzing these shapes, you start seeing how this shape is pretty similar to this. It's more of a mirrored version of this shape. Major chords, still straight lines. Okay, and this diminished is kind of like what our first shape was, just a reverse of that. Or at least the it flips, I guess. A mirrored version where this flips. Anyways, I think of all this stuff in shapes, and it really helps me to when I look down at the fretboard, I can see all these notes and these shapes, as I look down. So in this, we've got our major, minor, and diminished all in a line, let's say going horizontally, right? Where we just go up the fretboard with these arpeggios. Well, another neat thing to do is to stay in position where you're not necessarily having to jump. If you wanted to play a G arpeggio to a C arpeggio, you're not having to jump from open to jump all over the neck, but all your arpeggios in position too. So that's the other part of this lesson. So if we click over here to our 1-4-5 key of G, I've got our 1-4-5 arpeggios as close to in position as I can. Notice we've got a G arpeggio here, and then a C here, and then a D here. Once again, all these shapes are color coded. So once you learn one shape, all you got to do is understand where your root note is and move that to whatever chord you want, and you can play this shape, and that arpeggio will work over that chord. Okay. Now, when we go down here, we start seeing how you get these extensions and color tones. Now, in this particular lesson, I'm not going to teach you seventh, extensions of the seventh, the major, dominant seventh, the minor seventh, all that. We're just sticking real simple to triads. But I did want to show you in this little diagram here where you can get these extensions, right? Where if you wanted to major seventh, right, you go 1 fret behind the root. So if this is your root, go 1 fret back. If you played that note, that's your major seventh. If you go 2 frets behind the root, that's a flatted seventh. And if you want to know what that sound is, that has a very bluesy sound. Same thing with a flat third. A lot of times in blues, you'll flat the third, flat the seventh. Also, you flat the fifth, or flat 5 or sharp 4. That's the same note, and that's 1 fret behind your fifth. Okay, that if you're playing like a blues scale, a minor pentatonic with a flat 5, that's what's called the blue note. So once again, these are all bluesy kinds of sounds. And then these are these second, ninth, sixth, 13th, fourth, all that kind of stuff is kind of real pretty sounds, let's say. Just depends on how you're kind of using it, I guess what context. But anyways, and this chart tells you how to get those extensions. Okay, so I have these diagrams 3 strings at a time. Here's strings 1, 2, and 3. Right, for each your 1, 4, and 5 chords, G, C, and D in the key of G. And then we go down 2nd, 3rd, 4th strings. And notice how all the shapes there, all the arpeggio shapes are color coded to really get these shapes in your head. Right? We go to the next one. Notice the shapes there. And then once again, I didn't do strings 4, 5, and 6 because it's just a repeat of strings 1, 2, and 3. So trying to keep everything real simple for you. Always keep in mind, if you wanted to, you can add these extensions and color tones. Also, really practice your major scales. And I've taught that in other lessons, in addition to combining major scales with these arpeggios. Okay, then in these diagrams, what I've done is I've written out the minor chords in the key of G. So our 2, our 3, our 6 chord, and in addition, our 7 chord, which is a diminished chord, an F sharp diminished. Once again, all of our shapes, arpeggio shapes, are color-coded. Just to understand where that root is, that's the name of our arpeggio. But all the shapes of those stay the same. You're just moving the whole shape to match this root note to whatever that is, to match whatever arpeggio you want, really. So notice this kind of L shape here, and then we have this kind of shape for B minor. Okay, and then I do the same thing as I just go 3 strings at a time. Right there, I go to strings 2, 3, and 4. Go down, and then, strings 3, 4, and 5. Once again, I didn't do strings 4, 5, and 6 because it's just a repeat of strings 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so I'll get out my dobro now, and I'll play through these and show you, how I kind of approach this, and show you an exercise or two. And this should be good as a good start to really understanding more of your fretboard and where all these chord tones are. Okay, let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so let me real quick show you what an arpeggio is. So instead of just strumming a chord or maybe rolling through a chord, what you can do is you can pick out each individual note. And what you can do, that's G, B, D, right, a G major chord, is then you can play what's called inversions. And this would be like that diagram where I show you the different G chords, right, the 3 different G chords going up the neck, G, B, D, and then a different arrangement of those notes would be B, D, G, and that's what's called an inversion. And then D, G, B, and then back to your first root position, G, B, D. Now, the important part about what I think is important, at least about arpeggios, is you start thinking about the individual notes of the chord all over your neck, right? Root, 3rd, 5th. 3rd, 5th, root, 5th, root, 3rd, and then root, 3rd, 5th. Now, if we get out the diagram that has all the different major and minor and diminished arpeggios, three strings at a time, right, where we got G, A minor, B minor, and so on. I want to show you a cool little exercise. Now, I haven't tabbed this out, and I don't plan on tabbing it out. It's a real simple concept, and I think you can get it if you just think about this pattern. Okay, the pattern is going to be middle, index, thumb, middle. So middle, index, thumb, middle. That strings 1, 2, 3, back to 1. And you're going to do that pattern over each arpeggio shape. So we added over G, and then over A minor. Remember that triangle pattern. 2nd fret, 1st fret, 2nd fret, back to 2nd fret on our first string. So strings 1, 2, 3, 1. Notice how I tilt my bar up. I'm just getting the tip of my bar. And then when I go back up to my first string, what you got to do is flatten your bar out and then slide your bar up over those strings and then tilt it back up. Oop. So that's the idea. Tip of the bar and then flatten it out, slide it back up. Strings 1, 2, 3, 1. Do that same pattern over each arpeggio. So this is where the shapes get in. You start thinking more about that shape, right? Straight line, triangle, triangle, straight line for the C chord, straight line for the D chord, triangle for the E minor chord, a little bit different shape there for our F sharp diminished. Then I just grab strings 4, 3, and 2. Okay, now the idea is you do that for each 3 sets of strings that I've written those arpeggios for. So strings 2, 3.